Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Naranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parvikacharya Astatara Sadashi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakurti Vaishnavind Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinda Ki Jai Jai Radha Krishna Gopa Gopanashaya Makunda Radha Kunda Gira Gauranga Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mayapur Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 18, verses 30, 31, and 32. We're finishing the chapter on the killing of Pralambasura. There's no purports by Srila Prabhupada's disciples, but I will read one short tika by Sanatana Goswami, which I think sums up pretty much what's being said. So, beginning with verse 30. Drishtva pralamba nihatam balena balashalina gopasu vishmita asan sadhu sadviti vadinaha drishva pralamba nihatam balena balashalina gopasu vishmita asan sadhu sadviti vadinaha drishva pralamba nihatam balena balashalina gopasu vishmita asan sadhu sadviti vadinaha balena balashalinaha gopasu vishmita asan sadhu sadviti vadinaha. Drishtva, seeing, Pralambasura, Nihatam, killed, Balena, by Lord Balaram, Balashalinaha, who is by nature very powerful, Gopaha, the cowherd boys, Suvishmitaha, most astonished, Asan, became, Sadhu sadhu, very wonderful, very wonderful. Iti, these words, Vadinaha, speaking. The cowherd boys were most astonished to see how the powerful Balaram had killed the demon Pralamba, and they exclaimed, "Excellent, excellent." Please repeat. The cowherd boys were most astonished to see how the powerful Balaram had killed the demon Pralamba. And they exclaimed, "Excellent, excellent." Text 31. Ashisho bigranantas tvam prashasam shus tad arhadham pratyagatam ivalingya prema vivala chetasaha. They glorified Balaram. I learned the wrong line. They offered Balaram profuse benedictions and then glorified him, who deserves all glorification. Their minds overwhelmed with ecstatic love, they embraced him as if he had come back from the dead. Pape pralambe ihate deva parama nirvitaha abhyavarshan balam malyai shashamsu sadhu sadvati. The sinful Pralamba, having been killed, the demigods felt extremely happy, and they showered flower garlands upon Balaram and praised the excellence of his deed. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to the 10th canto, 18th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Balaram Slays the Demon Pralamba. And now, the commentary by Sanatana Goswami. This commentary is attached to the 30th verse. Balaram showed special powers in killing the best of strong demons. Thus, he is called Balasalina, which means one who is endowed with power. I mean, it is inherent power. Hari Vamsa says, Balam tu Baladevasya tada bhuvi jana vidu palambe nihate daitye devair api durasade. People on earth know the power of Balaram, since he killed Pralamba, who could not be killed by the Devatas. The boys were astonished because the demon had disguised himself as a coward boy. Or, Balasalina means by Balaram, who had the quality of praising Krishna's strength. He thought, that's Balaram, thought, I have killed this demon because of Krishna's powers. The coward boys were amazed at his great devotion to Krishna. Om Agyanatimirandasya Ganan Jalakaya Chakshur Umilitangena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Badai Krishna Basai Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nirvasesha Shunyavadi Praschachadesh Tarni Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasti Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Balaram states here by Sanatana Goswami, and he knows, thought, I have killed this demon because of Krishna's powers. Those powers inherent in Balaram are because Balaram is Krishna's first expansion, and in one sense non-different from Krishna, but is different from Krishna, because Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and Balaram is the Supreme Lord in a servitor mood. So the mood is different. But the result is the same here, which is that the demon is killed, and the boys are amazed. Sadhu sadhu, which is sometimes called out after a wonderful Krishna katha or some wonderful event where some prowess is shown. They are calling out twice in 2 verses, 30 and 32. Sadhu sadhu, because they're amazed at the prowess of Lord Balaram. But Lord Balaram, he is giving all credit to Krishna. because he is Krishna's greatest servant. In the sense that Krishna expands himself as Balaram, and then we won't get into the philosophy of all this because tomorrow is Balaram's appearance day and there will be so much talk. We'll stay more on the verse. Everything manifest in this material world we see is coming from the expansions who are coming from Balaram. Krishna is playing and Balaram is playing, but he's also expanding as Sankarshan and the quadruple expansions and Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, Kshirodakshai Vishnu, etc. But today I wanted to speak about Balaram and his prowess from a different place, from a little different perspective. Because as they say, tomorrow is Balaram's appearance day and we'll be hearing so much. But this will also be a glorification of Balaram from the understanding of Guru. Because Balaram, he is original Guru. So I'm going to go back to 1966 when Prabhupada was ready for the very first initiation of devotees. About this time, it's actually the first initiation of his first disciples was on Janmashtami in 1966, just 1 year after he had departed from India, because the first year in 65 he celebrated Janmashtami on the Jaladuta. The second year, 1 year later, a little less than a year because they shift around a little bit, but 1 year later, he's initiating his first disciples. So here I'll just read a little bit here. It's interesting about how he tells his disciples about initiation. And now he said at length, I will tell you what is meant by initiation. Initiation means that the spiritual master accepts the student and agrees to take charge, and the student accepts the spiritual master and agrees to worship him as God. He paused. No one spoke. Any questions? And when there were none, he got up and walked out. The devotees were stunned. What had they just heard him say? For weeks he had been stressing that when anyone claims to be God, he should be considered a dog. My mind's just been blown, said Wally. Everyone's mind is blown, said Howard. Swamiji just dropped a bomb. They thought of Keith, who later becomes Kirtanananda. He was wise. Consult Keith. But Keith was in the hospital, Bellevue. His parents had put him there because they said he was crazy as a devotee. Talking among themselves, they had become more and more confused. Swamiji's remark had confounded their judgment. Finally, Wally decided to go to the hospital to see Keith. Keith listened to the whole story, how Swamiji had told them to fast for Janmashtami, and how he had read from his manuscript, and how he had said he would explain initiation, and how everybody had leaned forward, all ears, and Swamiji had dropped a bomb. The student accepts the spiritual master and agrees to worship him as God. Any questions, Swamiji had asked softly, and then he had walked out. I don't know if I want to take initiation now, Wally confessed. We have to worship him as God? Well, you are already doing that by accepting whatever he tells you, Keith replied. And he advised that they talk it over with Swamiji before initiation. So Wally went back to the temple and consulted Howard. And together they went up to Swamiji's apartment. Does what you told us this morning, Howard asked, mean we are supposed to accept the spiritual master to be God? That means that means he is due the same respect as God, being God's representative. Prabhupada replied calmly. Then he is not God? They asked. No, Prabhupada said. God is God. The spiritual master is his representative. Therefore, he is as good as God because he can deliver God to the sincere disciple. Is that clear? And it was. So, Prabhupada's speaking here, and on authority, he's saying, the spiritual master is as good as God because he's delivering God. So therefore, he said we worship as God. But he's saying it he's just not making it up. He's saying it with authority. Because when we speak, we have to speak with authority. Again, last week we spoke and I brought up the Gospels. Because it's the same thing that happened with Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ made these claims. And the Pharisees would keep saying, on what authority do you say these things? And he had two answers. One was in your face. God sent me. That wasn't very satisfying to them. But the other one, they really couldn't refute. The prophets have predicted me. And he would cite verses from Isaiah especially. Because Isaiah does speak about the coming of a Messiah. Well, Prabhupada also cites in his book so many passages which state why the guru is to be worshipped as God. And we can begin to cite some of them here. One of them, which is quite definitive, is from Krishna book, 2nd chapter, the prayers of the demigods. And Krishna book is such a wonderful book. Prabhupada gave it to us very early in his mission, 68, 69. And, of course, it has the 10th canto text in it, but he also blends in so much of his own commentary to make sure that we understand what's being said. So in the prayers of the demigods, in one of the sections where he is making his comments, he speaks directly about why it is that the guru can be worshipped as God in relationship to Balaram. In the Upanishads, it is stated, Nayam Atma Balahina Labhya. The purport is that one cannot attain the supreme platform of self-realization without being sufficiently favored by Balaram. Bala does not mean physical strength. No one can attain spiritual perfection by physical strength. And it can be noted that Balaram is very strong. He carries the plow. He could drag Hastinapur into the Yamuna River. He's the most expert club fighter. I mean, he's very strong. God is very strong. I mean, just clubbed Pralambasura on the head with his fist and killed him in a moment. But he kills Ramaharshana Sutta with a kusha grass, taps him on the side of the head. So that strength is not physical strength, although sometimes there are some commentators who fixate on that. Prabhupada goes on. No one can attain spiritual perfection by physical strength. One must have the spiritual strength which is infused by Balaram or Sankarshan. Ananta or Shesha is the source of the power which sustains all the planets. See, Prabhupada is giving us the information here of how just a plenary portion of Balaram, which is Sheshanag, is holding up all the planets in all the universe. And they're like described as just resting on his head. It's the same way that mustard seeds be resting. They're insignificant for him. The law of gravity, which is really a theory and cannot be fully understood by science. Einstein did a lot of work with it, dealing with time and gravity and bending of space, et cetera, et cetera. It's really just the manifestation of Shesha holding everything up. So this is just an expansion, a plenary expansion of Lord Balaram, who is, of course, the first expansion of Krishna. Materially, this sustaining power is known as the law of gravitation, but actually it is a display of the potency of Sankarshan. Balaram, or Sankarshan, is the source of spiritual power, or the original spiritual master. And therefore, something very important for us in the next sentence, therefore Lord Nityananda Prabhu, who is also the incarnation of Balaram, is the original spiritual master. And the spiritual master is the representative of Balaram, the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who supplies spiritual strength. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is confirmed that the spiritual master is the manifestation of the mercy of Krishna through Balaram. So, this is a definitive proof. But there's more, and there's much more. But we'll read some other verses here. This is from Adi Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 5, and this is verse number 4. Sarva avatari Krishna Swayam Bhagavan Tanhara Duitita Dehi Sri Balarama. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the fountainhead of all incarnations. Lord Balaram is his second body. And Prabhupada writes in a short purport, Lord Sri Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead, is the primeval Lord, the original form of Godhead, and his first expansion is Sri Balaram. The personality of Godhead can expand himself in innumerable forms. The forms have unlimited potency. The forms that have unlimited potency are called swamsha. And forms that have limited potencies, the living entities, jiva souls, are called vibhinamsha. So Lord Balaram is a swamsha expansion of the Lord. He's exactly of the same potency. We, the living entities, are vibhinamsha. We are very limited in potency. So no one can claim to have any absolute power or strength. But yet the Guru, as the representative of Lord Balaram, has that position, as we will see a little later, has that position because the Balaram's potency is reflected in the Guru. Therefore, Prabhupada told his disciples, you must worship the Guru, worship me as God. But not because I'm God, but because Saksat Haritwain, like we sing in the morning, that the spiritual master, 7th verse of the Gurvasika prayers, the spiritual master is the embodiment of the service to God. Therefore, he is to be worshipped as God. The next verse here, verse number 5. Eka Iswarupa Done Bina Matrakaya Adyakaya Vyuha Krishna Lilara Sahaya. These two are one and the same identity. They differ only in form. Lord Balaram is the first bodily expansion of Krishna, and he assists in Lord Krishna's transcendental pastimes. And Prabhupada writes, short purport, but very important purport, Balaram is a swamsa expansion of the Lord, and therefore there is no difference in potency between Krishna and Balaram. The only difference is in their bodily structure. As the first expansion of Godhead, Balaram is the chief deity among the quadruple forms, and he is the foremost assistant of Sri Krishna in his transcendental activities. And then skipping ahead to verse number 10 of this in this section here, Prabhupada, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami writes, and Prabhupada comments, Shristadika Seva Tanra Agyara Palana Shesharupe Kare Krishnera Vivada Sevana. He, Balaram, executes the orders of Lord Krishna in the work of creation, and in the form of Lord Shesha, he serves Krishna in various ways. And then this is a little longer purport, but if we had to say, if you need to know anything about Balaram Tattva, this purport will, this is your cliff notes. Everything's here. According to expert opinion, Balaram, as the chief of the original quadruple forms, is also the original Sankarshan. Balaram, the first expansion of Krishna, expands himself in 5 forms. 1. Mahasankarshan, 2. Karanadakshayi, 3. Garbhadakshayi, 4. Shirodakshayi, and 5. Shesha. So you have Mahasankarshan, who is the chief of the quadruple forms, which are Pradumna, Aniruddha, Vasudeva and Sankarshan, yeah. And then we have Karanadakshayi Vishnu, which is the Mahavishnu. From him, all the universes are expanding as he breathes. He's not working. He's just lying in Yoga Nidra. And then we have Garbhadakshayi Vishnu, who's not working very hard either. He's also just lying down. And from him, from his navel, the lotus grows. Karanadakshayi Vishnu expands all the universes, and Garbhadakshayi Vishnu is in each universe, lying on the Garbha ocean, and from his navel sprouts the lotus on which Brahma finds himself, and he then, through meditation, understands what his job is. And then finally, Shirodakshayi Vishnu, who stays in the island of Swetadweep in the ocean of milk, he is actually manifested super soul in everyone's heart. And then Shesha, who is the transcendental serpent upholding the whole entire universe, all the universes. These 5 plenary portions are responsible for both the spiritual and material cosmic manifestations. In these 5 forms, Lord Balaram assists Lord Krishna in his activities. The first of these forms are responsible for the cosmic manifestations, whereas Shesha is responsible for personal service to the Lord. Shesha is called Ananta or unlimited because he assists the personality of Godhead in his unlimited expansions by performing an unlimited variety of services. Sri Balaram is the servitor Godhead who serves Lord Krishna in all affairs of existence and knowledge. Lord Nityananda Prabhu, who is the same servitor Godhead Balaram, performs the same service to Lord Gauranga by constant association. And finally, to speak about the last reference here, is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in the very beginning of the Adi Leela, chapter 1, text 44, speaks about the spiritual master, his spiritual master, who happens to be Lord Nityananda, who is Balaram directly. So we can see from the story, we know that the reason we have Chaitanya Charitamrita is that Baladev came to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in a dream and told him, go to Vrindavan. Now, he's already like 94 years old and really doesn't feel that he's up to like do this until Balaram infuses him with the energy by telling him, here's the order you do. And this is how Prabhupada worked too. Here's the order you do it. How else would the movement spread like it did with a bunch of, pretty crazy people, young people who didn't have really any qualifications. For the most part, no one had any qualifications, but they were infused with Prabhupada's mercy and power. So, I'll just read the English here. Although I know that my spiritual master is a servitor of Sri Chaitanya, I know him also as a plenary manifestation of the Lord. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, Lord, I'm not going to read the whole purport, just part of it here. Actually, every living entity is essentially a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the spiritual master is also his servant. Still, the spiritual master is a direct manifestation of the Lord. With this conviction, a disciple can advance in Krishna consciousness. The spiritual master is non-different from Krishna because he is a manifestation of Krishna. And why is he a manifestation of Krishna? Lord Nityananda, who is Balaram himself, the first direct manifestation or expansion of Krishna, is the original spiritual master. He helps Lord Krishna in his pastimes, and he is a servant of the Lord. So, and then it says, a spiritual master never poses as the supreme Lord himself. He is considered a representative of the Lord. The revealed scriptures prohibit one's pretending to be God, but a bona fide spiritual master is a most faithful and confidential servant of the Lord, and therefore he deserves as much respect as Krishna. And unless one actually has that attitude towards a spiritual master, you can't make advancement. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasada, yasya prasada nagatika topi. The last verse of the Gurvasika, which says, by the mercy of Krishna we get Guru, and by the mercy of Guru we get Krishna. And we have to understand that. That Guru is Krishna's grace upon us. That's why we say his divine grace, Srila Prabhupada. Now, to end the class, we'll go back to the initiation. Because the initiation is very interesting, and there's some very important things said here by Satsarup Maharaj. So the initiation does go through. And Prabhupada shows himself as a Mahabhagavat. He's able to adjust everything according to time and space. So no one was asked to shave his head or even cut his hair or change his dress. No one offered Prabhupada the traditional Guru Dakshin, the donation a disciple is supposed to offer as a gesture of his great obligation to his master. Hardly anyone even relieved him of his chores. So Swamiji himself had to do most of the cooking and other preparations for the initiation. He was perfectly aware of the mentality of his boys, and he didn't try to force anything on them. Some of the initiates didn't know until after initiation, when they had inquired, that the 4 rules, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, and no gambling, were mandatory for all disciples. Prabhupada's reply then was, I'm very glad that you finally are asking me about that. It was to be a live Vedic sacrifice with a ceremonial fire right in the front room of Swamiji's apartment. Now, I won't read everything because it's very long, but essentially they set the fire up and they start burning the fire, and it's pretty intense, and the whole place fills with smoke, and everybody is absorbed, but at the same time, it's a very intense, smoky sacrifice. I'm going to get to that. So he's engaging in all this, which I won't read, and then I'm going to come here to the point where the 11 initiates come up. After Wali received his beads and his new name, Umapati Swami now, he returned to his place beside Howard and said, that was wonderful. Getting your beads is wonderful. In turn, each initiate received his beads and his spiritual name. Howard became Hayagriva. Wali became Umapati. Bill became Ravinda Sarup, not the Ravinda Sarup who is around today. Carl became Karlapati. James became Jagannath. Mike became Mukunda Goswami. Jan became Janaki. Roy became Roy Ram, different Roy Ram that is famous now. And Stanley became Strayadish. Now, here's Prabhupada's mercy in the next sentence. Another Stanley, a Brooklyn boy with a job, and Janos, a college student from Montreal, both of whom had rather peripheral relationships with the Swami, appeared that night and took initiation with the rest, receiving the names Satyavrata and Janardhan. So Prabhupada was just giving freely of his mercy, because he's a Mahabhagavat. He can see, even when he knows that maybe someone will fall down, he's giving them a chance to connect to the parampara. So then Prabhupada starts the fire, and I will read here. After 15 or 20 minutes, he asked that each of the initiates place a banana in the fire. With the 11 bananas heaped on the fire, the flames began to die, and the smoke thickened. A few of the initiates got up and ran coughing into another room, and the guests retreated into the hallway. But Swamiji went on pouring the remaining butter and seeds into the fire. This kind of smoke does not disturb, he said. Other smoke disturbs, but this kind of smoke does not. Even though everyone's eyes were watering with irritation, he asked that the windows remain closed. So most of the smoke was contained within the apartment, and no neighbors complained. Swamiji smiled broadly, rose from his seat before the sacrificial fire, the blazing tongue of Vishnu, and began clapping his hands and chanting Hare Krishna. Placing one foot before another and swaying from side to side, he began to dance before the fire. His disciples joined him in dancing and chanting, and the smoke cleared, abated. He had each disciple touch his beads to the feet of Lord Chaitanya in the Panchatattva picture on the table, and finally he allowed the windows to be opened. As the ceremony was finished and the air in the apartment was clearing, Swamiji began to laugh. There was so much smoke, I thought I might have to call the fire brigade. Prabhupada, and this is important. This last paragraph is very important. Very important. Because this is what Prabhupada has done. This is the beginning. It's like when you start a little fire and it gets big later. Prabhupada was happy. He arranged that prasadam be distributed to all the devotees and guests. The fire, the prayers, the vows, and everyone chanting Hare Krishna had all created an auspicious atmosphere. Things were going forward. Now there were initiated devotees in the Western world. Finally, most of the disciples went home to their apartments, leaving their spiritual master to clean up after the initiation ceremony. But Srila Prabhupada's thinking, now, it's like when you have a little fire, it started. It's like when he went to Moscow and met one boy. It started. And a little fire, you can never stop it. After it gets going, it becomes blazing. The fire brigade can come, but still the house will burn down. So, Lord Balaram, Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. Any questions? It's a wonderful time. Yes. Right. We don't imitate, we follow in footsteps. Yeah, imitation is not such a good thing. But what we do is we take inspiration and we try to learn what Guru is doing. And Guru is like, in many cases, like the first grade teacher. First grade teacher has a master's in English, but she's there going A, B, C, D, and the little kids are going A, B, C, D. And it's, really slow and simple, but the little kids learn because the teacher's an expert. Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Adi Purusha